Thank you for joining part 2 of the podcast where I interview Josh Young. I wanted to give a trigger warning before we even started this episode because there is one point of the episode where Josh opens up about his past, talks about a suicide attempt. So I thought I would just throw that out there. Also, disclaimer, there is talk about drug use in this episode as well. If you have not heard part 1, please go check out that episode, and thank you all again for watching. Here is part 2 of my conversation with Josh Young. Enjoy. I was curious, so obviously having to deal with the pain of just all your friends kind of ostracizing you and everything. How did your family take it?
No, absolutely. My dad was, and I really haven't talked about it enough, but he was the one that gave me these books, and I would not have challenged my faith in the way that I did without my dad, without Bob, because it was his journey as well, and he was the one that read these books and kind of passed them on to me. And even now, he still, I would say, if you have him on, he'll tell you all about it. But he still, has a connection with Jesus and the Christian faith, absolutely. But Christianity as a religion, he's pretty devoutly against at the same time.
Yeah.
And I absolutely empathize and agree with the opinion that the vast majority of modern Christianity has been heavily bastardized by this idea of, and this is a tough thing because evangelism, right? You can make a claim that Jesus was an evangelist, and there's something fair to that, and it's kind of weird. It's how do you divide that line of when are you just spreading a word in a benevolent way, and when are you doing it with some ulterior motive? And I just think that there's a lot of ulterior motive, or at least misguided motive. I think that'd be a fairer way to maybe put it, is a misguided motive with a lot of that. But my mother is absolutely still, going to church a time or two a week, and is much more in the same vein of what we grew up with than my dad is, but they still both, are Christians. My mom is aware, they're both very smart individuals. My mom isn't dumb. She knows that I smoke weed. She knows that I have tattoos all over my arms and that I don't go to church and stuff like that. But a lot of it I'd say a lot of it goes unsaid because it doesn't necessarily need to be said. I think that is the thing that my parents have given me, and something that I feel like I've hopefully gone into some good detail on, is the idea of love regardless. Because while my mom does stay attached to these faiths, there's nobody that we could bring over to my parents' house as a friend or whoever that they would turn their nose at and be like, oh, this kind of person, that kind of person, they're so loving,
That's
mean,
awesome.
one of my last roommates, head to toe in tattoos, clearly was not about to go to church on a Sunday. And my mom could not have been kinder or more loving to that individual. And
That's awesome.
yeah, it's always been loving people first within my family, and a gift that I could not begin to explain my appreciation for, because a lot of people really aren't. There's, whether they know it or not, there's so much, especially in kind of milquetoast suburban Christian families, there is an ignorance that ends up implying or directly affecting a kind of discriminatory attitude. And it doesn't matter what you're discriminating against, you do discriminate, and not to say that we're perfect, absolutely. I think that there are certain beliefs that I don't hold, at least ways. I know homosexuality for my mom is what I'm thinking of, is she still thinks that in the eyes of God, that is something that is not all right. And that doesn't mean that she would treat anybody differently where they'd walk in. She's still going to love you the same, but she is going to think that is a sin. And, we weren't allowed to watch Ellen and stuff like that, like
Oh my
growing
gosh,
that
dude,
kind of
yes.
stuff, man.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I just laugh because that is just such like a Christian mom thing to do. Like,
my mom was such a
gay
Christian
talk
mom.
Oh, absolutely not.
No. A little spicy bit. We weren't allowed to play Pokemon. You might know this.
Oh my gosh, dude. Oh.
Look me in my eyes, listener, if you're watching this. Because of evolution.
I was just about to say that. When you said you didn't believe in evolution earlier, when you were explaining that whole thing when you were 12, I was like, were you not allowed to watch Pokemon? But that explains, dude.
Yes. That is absolutely what happened. And she will deny that to this day. Joyce, Joyce, don't you lie to me. You can't lie to us because we know. And myself and my sisters, like, we're aware of why we couldn't play Pokemon. At least Natalie and I wanted to.
Yeah.
But
Dang, such a sad child.
Yeah. Dude, you're telling me. I wasn't allowed to watch SpongeBob because it was quote unquote too stupid. And I did not realize how much that would just absolutely mess me up.
When everybody makes SpongeBob quotes every other second.
Yeah, just adults. Like, oh man, that's right. You all grew up watching SpongeBob, and I just missed that. Like, that is such a cultural touchstone.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where these days it does go kind of unsaid. And I also think that because I'd like to think of my belief in my faith as rather malleable, I think that it is something that can at least, what I mean by that is it could be described in a lot of different terms. So if I am talking to my mom about something, I am more likely to speak on it in these Christian terms. And if I bring up God, that might mean something different to me, but in essence, we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about the same kind of being that is overseeing the world, right? And I don't necessarily believe that there is one. However, it is important to my belief structure that, and this is something I always have a really hard time describing, I don't necessarily factually think that there is a God, right? But I do believe in a higher power, something that's like, if anybody listening knows or has been a part of AA or something like that, I know from friends and the time I was on probation and had to take these classes that the 12 steps involve surrendering yourself to a higher power, and that higher power can be anything. It could be the forest, it could be a rubber duck that you have at home, and it could be something like a Judeo-Christian God or something larger in religion. And I really like that idea. It is integral to my sanity to believe in a higher power, and whatever that higher power is could be anything, could be whatever. It doesn't have to exist, but that concept, that idea needs to exist in me in order to maintain a level of sanity and to feel a comfort and a peace in knowing that I don't have to have all the answers. And that's the biggest thing for me. That goes back to, it's probably like 3 years ago now, and we'll just kind of like get into it here. I had just moved out into this house in Redford, and this was around the time that, so it was like 2 years ago, is when COVID was really hitting, when it was starting, everything was shutting down. And I had moved into this new place. For one reason or another, I was, we were all apart from everybody, but I had just gone through a breakup, and one of my close friends was attached to that relationship, so I wasn't seeing them. My best friend was going through a bunch of stuff. I used to like spend all of my time over there, basically lived there, and he was going through a bunch of stuff, and he needed his space. And I was very much in this lonely time, as a lot of us were when COVID hit, and just had a really bad depression for a couple months there, not feeling much closure with the relationship. I didn't feel much closure with, and that friend that I lost, I was in a musical project with, and so my catharsis, my way to get stuff out was then affected, and it was just me kind of writing songs. And at the time, I was working salary, and we traveled for work, so I wasn't going anywhere. So it was just me at home with nothing to do, almost no responsibilities, if anything, feeling very empty and feeling like, the way I've always described it is, leaving religion, I started to rely on myself more, to a point where I did become more of an atheist and just believing, no, there's nothing, like all that stuff is BS. And I pictured myself as the CEO of the skyscraper of Josh. Like, it's a big tower, a big business, and that business is me. And there's all these floors of people running around and signing papers and all this stuff. And I was at the top, and it felt like the entire building was on fire. And it went, well, I am at the top here. There's nothing else that can be done because my office is on fire.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. I can't solve any of these problems, and I don't feel a support. And so, what is there? And I very lightly took there's levels to this stuff. I can't stress that enough because mental health is a complicated beast.
Yeah.
But I did a very half-hearted attempt on myself with a leather belt around my neck, and there's a very twisted humor to the fact that I am 6'6". And it is very hard when you're 6'6" to find a place to put a belt on a ceiling that you could actually reach. But like wandered aimlessly, unable to, and then just kind of like pulled on that belt for a little while, but knowing that, it wasn't fully going to go through. And, I was in therapy at the time. I still am. Shout out to my therapist, Nora. Shout out to my roommate at the time, Kara, who was really there for me. But all of that is to say, those experiences made me realize that in order to keep my sanity, when I felt like everything was on fire, I simply had to believe that whatever it is, whatever the case may be, there is something in an office above my office that is signing papers. I often say I picture it like a black silhouette, like the dad from Codename Kids Next Door. That just idea and surrender. Surrender is the word that I take away from that time. That idea of just accepting that you are not going to have the answers, but something does, and things will work out in ways that you cannot comprehend. And if you spend all your time trying to figure out how things are going to shape out, you're going to drive yourself crazy. And it's that Jesus take the wheel. It's that idea of, I can't do this on my own. I'm letting go. And finding a peace within that is something that I think all this stuff happens naturally, and often in order to find new healthy ways to look at life, you have to hit a rock bottom. That is a big consistency. And I am grateful for the people that were in my life at the time, and grateful for the concepts that I was raised with, and that idea of God, that I know what it's like to fully believe in a God. And it was not too difficult to then piece together what that looked like for me at that time. Like, okay, I'm not gonna attach this. I'm not gonna attach the Bible to it. I'm not gonna attach Jesus necessarily, but I'm going to take all of those good things, all those things that again resonate within me, and adopt them into a way to keep myself all right, and spread that as best as I can with other people. Which again, like when I say that stuff, I wince at myself as though I sound enlightened when I am not. I am a broken person who has flaws that I'm constantly trying to work on and get better at, and I don't know more than anybody else. But those principles help me feel all right. And I've had, again, plenty of bad times since then, plenty of great times since then. But that was a big defining moment in how I understand faith. That was kind of the return to the idea of belief that kickstarted how I feel about stuff today.
Wow, that's amazing, man. Well, first of all, I'm just so glad you're here, man. Like, I'm just so thankful for your life.
Who else would you marry if
who else would I marry if
here?
Josh was Wow, man, that's incredible. A few thoughts I had as you were saying that, going back to like the piece of your mom part, truly shout out to Joyce right now, because just of like how much she's just like loved you unconditionally, because like I know there's a lot of parents out there where it's like their kid doesn't go to church anymore, or they don't believe in God or whatever it is, and it's just like, and I totally understand, it absolutely wrecks them, but like the way that they like go about it, where they almost like become apathetic and like, oh, he's not my son anymore, absolutely. There's a lot of that out there that's just like, or just looking at them so differently, and it is sad, but I'm so glad that your mom loved you like just so unconditionally. And like, if you mind me bringing up, I remember you sharing with me when you got, if you're okay with me saying this, when you got the whole DUI for the possession of marijuana.
Not a DUI to be specific. No, I got
in possession.
So I got arrested. I had weed in my car. It was possession of narcotics and then possession of paraphernalia were the two misdemeanors I got.
Gotcha.
They dropped one when I pled guilty to it. Spent 8 months in probation. I did 30 hours community service. I want to say it was like 10 weeks of this outpatient therapy program that was basically like an AA, NA kind of mix. And, and like $2,000 in fees and all that. And drug testing 3 to 4 random times a month. Every morning I would wake up at like 5 or 6 o'clock, I forget, and I think it was 6 that your colors would be put on this website, and I was black was the color, and so if I just saw that with all the other colors, it was like, okay, I'm gonna go in and tinkle in a little cup and have to pay them money for it. That was a whole thing.
Yeah.
My mom was not happy. Yeah. I remember, oh man, I told her this story too. I just find it hilarious. Like, yeah, obviously, any mother in that moment, I was like 19 or 20 or something like that, not going to be pleased. I remember that there's this little kind of bump at the end of our driveway where there's like, one of those water pipes underneath, how you got the like, I don't really know what that's called, but sewer channel or whatever, something like that. But anyways, there's a little hump at the end of our driveway, and it had needed to be removed, and so she just gave me a square shovel and sent me out there to try to get rid of it. I could not. Yeah. It was cement. This is cement and a stone. A square shovel. Gosh, I find that hilarious. Just like, all right, you're gonna go hit rocks with a shovel. Yeah, that's what's up. But I'm so sorry. Anyways,
I just wanted to say though, like I remember you telling me that you felt just like, even though your mom wasn't mad, like you just still felt like so loved by her. Like she came and picked you up, and like it was like she was just there for you. And I feel like she was just truly showing the love of God in that moment of like just being so mad and furious and disappointed with your son, but like still just loving him no matter what.
100%. Yeah, and that's something that I think I even can almost take for granted in like a really beautiful way, that idea, because you say those things and I go, man, yeah, something like that happens to some kids and like their entire relationship with their parents could be changed forever. And my mom will always be my mom, and I know that there's nothing that I could do to change that, and that is the kind of, just to echo what you're saying, the kind of infinite, eternal love that we both appreciate and desire so much to have in our lives from the ways that we were raised in the teachings of Jesus for both of us. And you can, find that love in many ways, but yeah, absolutely.
Nice, man. And like, I guess my question too, so like, it's like this long summary of it, but I guess like if you were to like paint it in the shortest summary of like what you believe in now, because like you said, you were atheist at one point, and then like through AA you realize like there's something greater than you, and like
through mass depression.
There's
something real absolutely.
I know there's people out there that say like they kind of put a label on themselves, of like, oh, like I've deconstructed, meaning like, and I'm still trying to kind of figure it out. It's like, oh, so like, do you still believe in God and you just like hate church and never want to be a part of it, or like?
It's a great question, and I don't know if I have an immediate answer for you because
For sure.
like the best way I feel like I can put it is perhaps I ascribe to whatever brings out the best parts of me and whatever I can do to bring out the best parts of the other. I wouldn't say that I'm Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I'd say I'm more Christian than atheist, maybe. You know,
sure.
I do just like to believe in something, anything, you know?
Yeah.
And I think believing in something, I believe in something.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the best way I can do it. I just believe in something and I don't know what it is. And that something doesn't have to be anything, which I
Yeah.
realize is such a confusing way to put it. But my belief system is to merely believe and to trust that there's more going on than I am aware. And that if I am on my path, if I feel like I'm connected with my journey on life, that it'll do okay. And I think that there's a lot of pitfalls. I remembered reading something recently that I'm going to totally botch, but to paraphrase, it's the idea that like our addictions and our vices pull us away from enlightenment. And I think that that's really powerful, and I think that maybe that's the journey I hope that I am on, is this idea of I guess enlightenment, but not in this kind of traditional pop culture way of like one day I see the light and all of a sudden I can like see everything and
Yeah.
I can astral project and know what you're about to eat for breakfast tomorrow. Like nothing like that. Being fully present with one's existence, I think is a better way to put it. So I've taken psychedelic mushrooms before. I have maybe more times than I've had regular mushrooms because I hate mushrooms. I hate mushrooms. I do not eat regular mushrooms. I've probably eaten more psychedelic.
Yeah.
And I've done acid a couple times as well. I'm very particular about it. I haven't done it in a couple of years, but I think those things kind of come to you instead of going to them, and that it has to be in the right environment. And for me, I always want to get something out of it because it is, I mean, scientifically proven that your brain connects in all these different ways. It's like, okay, A goes to L, M goes to T, what have you. And when you take something, a psychedelic like that, like psilocybin, your connections now go everywhere. Now A goes to B through Z. You know what I mean? Your understanding, your thought process is scientifically expanded from these things. And so this was like the second time I think that I had tripped, and I remembered getting to a point where I was no longer in my head, which is kind of a weird thing to describe, but it was like my inner monologue wasn't necessarily existent, shall we say. Every time I was with one of my friends, and as we were having these conversations, everything that I was responding with felt like it was exactly what was coming out of my heart. It felt like exactly who I was, because
Yeah.
we are constantly altering who we are and how we say things depending on the situation. It's kind of our anxiety brain is like, okay, I'm around you, I'm not swearing, and I know you said that I can swear, but it just doesn't feel right. But it just doesn't. And you know, if I was in that place right now, then maybe I would be swearing. I would be doing exactly how I felt, and I felt like that was my understanding of enlightenment: is full presence, being fully, completely and utterly present in any situation. That is more or less some version of that is what I am looking for. I am looking to be so in tune with understanding who I am, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that it is not a question. I have an anxiety disorder, and to be rid of some of that constant, incessant thought and analysis and merely enjoy the present moment is, I think, the goal of a lot of us, is to just not be in our heads all the time. And that's another big part. But again, like you kind of asked me for a concise description, and I'm going on all these tangents, and it's emblematic of the way I see things. Like I don't know how well I can pin it down, other than what I said earlier, as far as like just having belief and trying to put as much good out there and be as good as I can, and take out, I guess, as much negativity. But we do what we can, and I just want to love others.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. I love that. Yeah, no, and you're doing very well.
I love you, Alec.
I love you too. Something that I thought of that resonated when you were talking is like, you feel like addiction takes you away from enlightenment. And I've had this like click in my head before of like, I was talking to my friends and they're Catholic, and they were just explaining to me some of their beliefs, and they were like, yeah, we believe that like murder is like a worse sin than like, the rest of it, or the rest of the sins, and like, so is this or that. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. Like I could like, because at the end of the day, like, I believe God sees all sin as equal. And it's like, I'm curious of why somebody would put one sin on a higher pedestal than the other. And the more that I thought about it, I was like, oh my gosh, you know what? Like maybe they're onto something, as in like, because even though I don't necessarily believe that like one sin is greater than another, like that, I just couldn't help but thinking of like, all right, like let's define sin for a second. A lot of people are like, look at it as something very black and white, like it's good and bad, like sin is bad or sin is evil, like, and it's like, well, I think it could get there for sure, but I think what sin is like, sin is what separates us from Jesus. When we commit, like, I've never killed anybody, but I mean, put yourself in the shoes of somebody for a second that just committed the act of murder. Like, I'm sure that,
I'm
like,
putting the shoes on, just so we're
that I'm sure that like anxiety would just like rid your body at that moment. Guilt would rid your body. Your body would experience something that it never has before, of like this guilt and this shame and this anxiety and adrenaline and all this stuff. And even though you did commit evil, it's so hard to be present with God in that moment, because everything is overwhelming your body right now with everything. And when you say like addiction takes us away from enlightenment, I think of the same thing. Like when, like, I've been to those classes before of like, people talking about why porn is so bad. And I totally agree with that. And even though thankfully I've never struggled with pornography really, like I understand like the addiction there, and why sexual sin could be considered an addiction, because it's like your body is just so overwhelmed with this feeling, and like it's so hard to find enlightenment in those times. So I don't know, that just like kind of provoked something in me where I feel like I believe something similar of like, man, I don't know if like these sins are better or worse or whatever it is, but I do think that it does take us away from this higher power, for you, for me, whatever it is. So that definitely resonates with me. And that's kind of something that I believe of like, man, I think there is something behind why the Bible says like, sexual sin affects the body more than any other sin. Like I think the reason of that is because it's like, it's so much harder for us to focus on God when our body is literally pushing us towards like one direction,
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point. And it makes me think, like earlier I mentioned I smoke weed. And it's from conversations I've had with you, honestly, that have challenged me in these regards, because like everything we're saying, there's ways to distract ourselves from problems we have to face. And all these things that you brought up, they are often distractions from problems we have to face. And I know that we've had, this is so Christian of me to say, but we've had the pornography conversation. And I am not currently opposed. But I really do. I don't know. There's something in me when you say that does resonate as far as the ways that we distract ourselves and the ways that we can rely on impulses instead of dealing with other things. And this is something that I'm sure like a scientist could probably do a better job of, I don't have the answers there, and I think that there's something to be said for denying yourself, and there's something to be said for accepting who you are at the same time. And it's that weird fine line game we play of like, if I spend all of my time being upset at myself for being imperfect, I'm not going to get anywhere, and I'm just going to fill myself with hatred and misery.
Yeah.
And yet if I'm fully complacent with the person that I am today, if I'm totally okay with it, then I'm never going to grow.
Yeah.
And
there's no reason to change.
So I think you might have just helped me realize what my religion is. My religion is balance. I think that is, at the end of the day, what I believe everything to be. And the purest form of anything is balance, is the something in between. If there's a million miles of blue on the left and a million miles of red on the right, and in between them, there's a centimeter of nothing. That balance, that something in between, because so many things we can ascribe to ourselves as negative that are just one side of the coin, and trying to find a place where you can meet in the middle with yourself and with the world, I think is where you find the happiest places. The quote, "The wisest one is the one who knows themselves the most." It's that kind of idea of, I think when you know yourself, you know that it is a balance, that it is in between. I think of, I was like a really lazy kid. And that's not fair, but I'll start off by saying, like, 16 years old, I get a job and working at a grocery store. Do not care about it. Super lazy, like, did not care at all. And so I labeled myself a lazy kid and like would be upset at myself and all this stuff. When I started to work at jobs where I enjoyed them, I was having fun, and I felt useful, became I'd like to think a fairly exceptional employee. And at this point in my job, like, I have a lot of trust I've built up and a reputation. People know that they can rely on me and all these things. And so on one side of the coin, I can just say I'm lazy. And on the other side of the coin, I could say, well, I only care when I really like want to care about something. And in the middle, this analogy is kind of going off the rails. But in the middle, I just am. I am not this, I am not that. I'm something in between. And like, gosh, yeah, I really did not land that analogy the way I wanted to, and I'm a little bit upset about it. But I digress. Often we find ourselves being upset that we are one way, and we wish we're the other. But if we were fully the other, we would. The grass is always greener, kind of thing. Like the grass is always greener, I think, is a really important sentence, because if you can find some way to balance yourself on top of that fence, you're gonna find something to be okay with.
Yeah,
something like that.
For sure. Yeah. No, I always value your perspective, Josh. It's always...
As do I to you.
It's always enlightening me. Did you know a Little Caesars Hot and Ready pizza is only $5? And if you have a gluten allergy like me, you aren't able to buy that pizza anyways, so you could put that $5 towards our Patreon. That's right, everybody. For only $5 a month, you could get extended cuts and early access to all of these podcasts. For everybody who has subscribed to the Patreon, they have already gotten to see this episode last week, which is a part of the early access benefit. So go check out our Patreon. Thank you, and back to the episode. Do you feel like, because you're a like really deep thinker, obviously, and you've thought about a lot of these things before?
I'm not going to label myself that, but it is a kind thing to say. And I guess I definitely spend a lot of time thinking. Yeah. Whether or not that's productive is another conversation.
Yeah. and I guess that is part of the question is like, I believe like in the Bible, Solomon says like, wisdom is misery, kind of. Like it's miserable to like be like have a lot of knowledge and like be smart. So do you feel like sometimes that affects your faith? Because at the end of the day, I think like a part of faith is like just fully believing and not seeing. And I think like when we strive for too much knowledge, it's like I have to have an answer at the end of the day. And for a lot of the times, I personally believe that's kind of like for a false sense of peace. But like, what do you think when it comes to that?
I think that's a really great question. I think that's really interesting. I would say I absolutely fear the idea of fully surrendering to a faith or a belief system. And a big part of that is because I did, and that was shattered, you know? Because I mean, I was a very devout Christian, you know? I was a good boy, and anything that... I was a good little boy, and anything that I did that was outside, that was sinful, I felt shame and guilt inside for. If I was like I cheated in math one semester, and you know, I looked at boobs on the internet. I did it. I did the thing, and just felt like horrible, and it tore me up in this stuff, and I no longer feel that kind of guilt or pain in me being myself. I accept it, and that's not true. It's not like I'm that enlightened, but depending on the thing, little things like that, like I won't spend all my time calling myself a piece of garbage. I will accept that I am imperfect and that it is a journey, and that is okay, and that is very vital to how I believe things. But on your point of faith, it's really, really hard to picture me fully just going, yep, all right, I'm going to believe in this thing. And because that giving up that level of control does feel dubious. It is a fear I have, because you can look at, as a Christian yourself, if you see somebody become a devout Scientologist, you're going to go, man, you know, like, and I mean, any devout Scientologist, I'm going to go, man, you know, like, I really wish that you hadn't given up that much of your autonomy to have all of this faith in something that is fruitless. You know, no matter how many things you might get out of it, plenty of people, I've watched a lot of Scientology documentaries, so I'm fascinated by it. A lot of people got a lot of good out of Scientology at first, and it was the rabbit hole that created that, a bunch of horrible stuff. But to me, it's hard to say, if that's the case for this religion, what makes any other belief system different? And if I fully say it is this, then it means that it therein can't be that, you know? And that kind of rigidity, I do fear, I do push against. And the question that you asked incites this, well, is that, you know, how good is that? How bad is that? Where I'm at now, I don't think there's any more argument for one religion than there is another. And at the end of the day, any religions, what they would say to that is, yeah, but ours is right, you know, and I'm really curious to your opinion, and I'm having a great time, and thank you so much for letting me ramble as much as I do, absolutely. And I want to hear your opinion on that, and how you see believing in something so solidly, and how you take the question of why not another religion outside of this is what I believe, because you can go with this is what I was raised with and stuff like that, which I frankly do think is the beginning of that for most people. But if it is not that, if it is this is what I believe, it has changed me. Well, other religions have also changed people and made them for the better and stuff like that. So what is it for you in your faith that this might be a harsh word, but I don't mean it harshly,
Yeah.
demands a label or a name or an answer. Do you feel that pressure? Maybe not pressure, but do you feel that kind of desire to remain with under one banner as opposed to any other banner? You know, is it the teachings and all encompassing, like all the stuff that they talk about is better than the stuff that the other people talk about, or I don't know, just
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question a lot. Yeah, man, it's one of those things of like, I've heard people that have talked about before, like, oh, I just wanted to see if there's more than Christianity out there, so I just started studying every single belief out there that was like known to man, and I'm not that person. I've never done that. And I think for me, just like a bit of my testimony, it's like I grew up Christian. My parents raised me going to church and everything. And I think the best answer is like misery. Like if it wasn't for misery, I would have never found Christ. Because like, and I know it's funny to say, but like when I was 17, I was dating a girl. I remember my parents or my mom being like, well, you need to date like a Christian girl or whatever. And, or like encouraging that, at least. She didn't say you need to, but encouraging that. And I dated this girl from my church and it didn't go well. And I was like, well, what's the point of dating a Christian girl between a non-Christian girl, or, whatever. I dated this one girl when I was like 17. And we dated for a while, and I lost my virginity to her. So she eventually broke up with me, and I was like ruined and went through like a depression, the grief stage, everything. But that was like the point in time in my life where like dwelling to me, like that's something I struggle with even to this day, is like dwelling on everything that's went wrong in my past with failed relationships. And that overcame me more than anything I could have ever wanted in my life. Like I would never ask for that on my worst enemy, is like what I went through at that time. And I know that sounds a lot, because again, like people might listen and be like, oh, he's just this 18-year-old kid that, went through a heartbreak or whatever. But like in that time, it was like I kind of just did my own thing, and then I dated another girl, and the same thing happened. She breaks up with me. I'm super a lot of emotions, and now it's like I'm carrying the weight of like 2 of these heartbreaks, and it's just like this is like too much to carry, and to that point of like point of submission.
I absolutely see that kind of parallel there.
Yeah. And it wasn't until I was 19 and I went to my college group. Pastor Chris Pasick, who's the pastor of Unite Community Church, he was talking about how everything that happens bad in your life, God is using it to pull you closer to him. And like out of every sermon, that was like what stuck the most. And I was like, oh my gosh, like there's a reason why I'm going through this right now, like all this misery in my life. And I believe God is using it to bring me closer to him. And I remember my mom just giving me a devotional, and it was called Jesus Calling, Peace in His Presence. I'm sure you've seen it before. I'm sure your mom has it or something as well, maybe. I just remember reading the devotionals, and like the peace that I experienced in my life was like absolutely undeniable. And I'm so thankful for that like time that I had with God, because like I know there's a lot of people that are like, man, I've never felt God. I've never heard from him. That's why I don't believe in him. And that's so heartbreaking to me. But like, dude, in that time, I was like, there was like this feeling that I've never experienced before. And it wasn't like I went to a church worship service and I felt something because of the songs or whatever. It was like, nope, it was me and a book in my living room experiencing the presence of the Holy Spirit for the first time in my life. And it absolutely changed my life. But going from experiencing like the worst misery I've ever experienced in my life to this undeniable peace that made no sense, it was like, okay, there's something here. And that's where it was one of those things of like, I didn't have to question it. I didn't have to question if, any other of these like gods or religions or whatever it was. It was like, all right, this is, I don't need any further proof. This is like it for me. And like that, I don't know if I answered your question fully, but that was like just the overwhelming experience that I had with Christ in that season of my life. That's when I was like, this is it. That's like, there's nothing else.
No, that's thank you for sharing. I appreciate I had heard bits and pieces of that story, but to hear it all concisely was a treat. Thank you again. But I find that interesting, and how much, as I feel like you were kind of realizing as you were saying it, that does draw parallels with the story that I told of kind of when like it made me realize like that is when I quote unquote found God, was in that moment when I really, because you're always looking for God, and you think you found him, but he doesn't hit you like that. I think growing up, like when you have those emotional nights of worship where they get like 15 people saved instead of like one or two.
Raise your hand if you got saved.
Raise your hand, and you feel that there's that social pressure, honestly, to feel something, to feel this connection with God, and so much that is manufactured. But when you hit rock bottoms again, I don't know if we were talking about rock bottoms, and I was talking about that with my mom a little bit earlier. In order to get to certain points, you need to like hit that low and feel like you're out of options and be desperate for something. And the concept of surrender, the idea of believing in more than yourself and that things will be okay, and really feeling that inside is so transformative, and is the floor you need to not feel like you're constantly falling sometimes. And for me, I feel like I found that, but in a different way. And I think I personally believe that you can find that in different ways, but that it doesn't really matter what way you find it. It's about finding it and then being able to, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Like really, just being able to spread that as much as you can. And for me, I think that religion will restrict that because of people's bad relationships with this religion or that religion, or the fact that they do believe in something else. And so just because you believe in something else, there is now a wall where we could be talking about the same stuff, but you can't hear that because you just know that I'm labeled this or that. And again, walls and stuff like that. I try to avoid them, and that wasn't my personal journey, but I really do, empathize with a lot of that. And I think that is so beautiful, and one of the most important moments in anybody's life, if and when they feel like they can find that sense of surrender and peace.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Absolutely, man.
It I just feel the need right now to like be a witness to the things I've experienced, and like I do truly believe like the whole reason we're here is like to glorify Jesus, and I love sitting with you and talking about this, and like just hearing the story right now, like everything we talked about today, like the fact that you were trying to buy a laptop from, what was it called? One Egg or something? New Egg. Like I feel like even from something as little as that New Egg wouldn't process your order, to the fact that you went to Best Buy to get a new laptop, who you saw Dan, who invited you to play this show, where I then met you, where you and I and Chase started working together, and I got to know your heart and you got to know mine, and we just like started this friendship and just this love, and the fact that I got to work on this incredible art that is now in my portfolio, that's like higher up in my portfolio just because of how well it turned out.
Get out of here.
Coming to,
get out of here.
Going through all of these things, coming back here right into this moment of us making this podcast, getting to share my story, getting to hear yours, like it all goes back to glorify God. Like I truly believe that. And like, I don't know, it's such a cool thing to me. And I'm like whether if you or anybody else believes that or not, I'm just here to say like I've been a witness to it, and I think it's awesome,
Yeah. And what's funny is that I would say that I think that we both feel that way I think that I would say that I agree. I don't necessarily know if you would. There's clearly no love lost because no matter what, I mean, that's just Alec is the homie and we love him so much. But I say yes, and I say that, you know, for me it's the universe in whatever that means, and for you it is Jesus Christ, and who am I to say that that's incorrect? You know, it would be against the way I see things to suppose that that's incorrect. It would just also be against the way I see things to suppose that it is absolutely correct. That seems to be that the place where we do find ourselves, like it's not like on the other side of a wall, it's like on the other side of a tennis net. It's like I can see you clear as day over there, and we're still hanging out. We're having a good time. But there is that thing there. And also to put a double button on the story, I loved how you just kind of created that segment of it at the very beginning of that. When I was trying to order that laptop and I was with my friend, I might have mentioned this earlier, but I feel like I didn't. It didn't go through like 3 times, and my friend said to me, maybe the universe doesn't want you to get the laptop right now.
Oh, man.
I swear. Yeah. And it's like, it did not, you know, and God did not want me to get that laptop right there. God wanted me to meet you. God wanted me to have all these things happen.
Absolutely.
And at that point, like we agree fully. And it's like that thing, that feeling of, oh, this is special. I can see all those moments and how cosmic they are. We both think they're cosmic. We both think that there was something to all those. It's just a matter of, at that point, what is it? And that's where there's this, I think, interesting place for debate and conversation. But but we are really, we always end up being so similar in how we see things and feel them, but just with different names at times. And I mean, you know, depending on how you want to look at it, different motivations. But I think that they are also, I think they're the same motivation. I think they're very similar motivations at the least.
Yeah, for sure, man. Last question for you on this topic, as of right now, because I can't think of any more. But
of course,
how can Christians just love you better? Because obviously we've went through and we've talked about all these like things that, you know, they've done that they think they're loving you, and they're just really not. They're building up that wall. So like, and anybody listening that's a Christian, I really want them to like take this in right now, because it's like you are getting like the inside view of like somebody that has different beliefs or whatever it is. And like, I'm just like just let them have it, Josh. Like how's the best way that you could feel loved by Christians?
Immediately it doesn't strike me as something that's like, okay, what can Christians do? It feels more like, what can people do in general to, like, I don't know. I heard that and I just go, what can people do to love more? And I think that the biggest thing is just listening, which it feels ironic because I know that I'm your guest, but I monologue so heavy. I'm big into monologuing, and you're very gracious. So we've done a lot of that. But taking the time to accept that you don't know everything, and trying to be present and think that maybe somebody has a point that I don't know, and getting over yourself, your ego and your defenses is so difficult. Love it. And you know, it's a weird thing, because I don't think that that's something that, I know it's not something that can happen overnight, and I don't think it's something that you make as much of a concerted effort on as you trust that the universe, God, what have you, will guide you to opportunities in order to do that. So recognize the opportunities where you can be an active listener.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
can and an active questioner. You know, be curious. Be curious. As Ted Lasso says on one of my favorite shows. Ted Lasso is great. You know, people that don't ask questions, that aren't curious, they end up with less perspective. Like for me,
let's go.
Maturity is acting upon perspective. And in order to act on perspective, you have to have it. So the more you can get out, like, dude, what I want y'all to do, what I want everybody to do is do something new. You know,
Yeah.
make different friends, try a new hobby, listen to a new kind of music that you had turned your nose at, you know, because gatekeeping is a way that we just stop ourselves from having more fun. I was so against liking The Weeknd. And my coworker at Trader Joe's was like, "Have you heard Starboy though?" And I was like, "The Weeknd, yeah, whatever that pop BS, you know. I listen to real music. Have you ever heard of Mumford and Sons?" like Mumford and Sons, and it's that idea of like great things can come in ways that you didn't realize they could.
Yeah.
And that's your heart being hard, and just soften it, bro. Not for me, for yourself, for everybody, man.
Gosh dang, bro. I love it. If I could write all that into a quote and just like, that'll be the Instagram post.
Good luck. Yeah, good luck. Good luck finding a 30-second clip for TikTok when I'm going on for 8 minutes about psilocybin and like getting arrested.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, but dude, that is truly, Josh, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh,
and
shucks.
I second
gosh.
that. I third that on Josh, everything Josh just said. So to summarize it, Christians, people,
You heard it here third.
Let's listen better. Let's be a little bit more empathetic, and let's be a lot more humble.
And listen to more of The Weeknd and a little less Mumford and Sons. Okay, Mumford and Sons hasn't been cool in a while. You know? Like,
Bro, I'm dead. No, dude, that is so awesome. And you know, it's so awesome that you say that, because Peter Scazzarzo, the guy that wrote that Emotionally Healthy Relationships course that Tony and I went through, he talks about in there how I think he quotes it from somebody else, but they say like typically like listening and loving are almost like indistinguishable. Like you can't tell them apart. And like, I hope everybody that wants to learn to love others better today, I hope that they could truly understand that like, bro, just listen to them. It is so easy. Like, do your best not to have a one-sided monologue. And again, I've been guilty of it. It's like,
everybody.
just listen. And like, that person is going to feel so much more loved at the end of the day. That is a love language.
That is it. Facts. And that love language is called therapy, because that
Therapy.
100%. Yeah. Just a huge part of what I've learned from going to a therapist, and like, and the friends in my life that have had the biggest profound impact on me have sometimes said the least. Because we all know our own problems. Like
Yeah.
we all know better than anybody else what's wrong with us.
Yeah.
We spend all day thinking about it.
Yeah.
And so when you share yourself with somebody and your feelings and your pains, and they go, "Well, have you thought about going outside more?"
Yeah.
Like, that's what drives people crazy. Because it's like, yes, I have. Yes, I have, as a matter of fact.
Have you thought about cutting gluten out of your diet?
Oh, save it. Save it, Martha. I don't want to hear it right now. Go back to your spin class or something. And the more that you do try to give people answers that they really can figure out themselves, the less they're going to trust you. The less they're going to be able to open themselves up, because they go,
100%.
oh, if they think that that's my problem, if they think I haven't already thought about that, then they're not going to understand the things 2 layers past that. You let people work, man. Or you wait till they ask you for advice.
Yeah, exactly. Or they just bulldoze you the entire time.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm not feeling here. Okay, I guess my feelings aren't heard. And that's the thing, is like, the desire is to get your feelings out, bring the internal, external, so you can see them and make sure that they're real. Yeah. Because they're swimming around, and it's just like, that emotional vertigo is something that I've felt so many times, especially in like my understanding of belief and seeing them shift. Like, shoot, how do I feel about this? What is good? What is bad? What is right? What is wrong? When you're able to just say those things. And that's why I write all the songs that I do, I'd like to think, is that articulation of taking what's internal, making it external. I have all these thoughts. I'm not going to think about exactly what thoughts I need to get out. I'm just going to get these thoughts out and see words just kind of appear on the page.
Yeah.
And then realize, oh man, okay, yeah, that works, that hits, that applies. Whatever your catharsis is, that's the lesson too, is like, bring the internal external.
Yeah,
you know. Yeah.
absolutely. Dude, that's awesome. Heck yeah, bro.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Mr.
Yeah,
Alec. It's
absolutely,
been a true
man.
pleasure and a half.
This concludes Josh Young's interview, and I just want to say that I'm incredibly thankful for the unconditional love that his parents have poured out on him throughout the years, and I'm also so thankful for Josh's heart, for Josh's honesty about his beliefs, his path, and it has been an absolute honor getting to have this conversation with him. I'm still trying to figure out all the copyright stuff to music and putting it on a podcast on Spotify. But until I figure that out, please go check out Josh's band Camino Kid. As you've heard us talk about in the podcast, I got the opportunity to produce their music, and I thought it turned out incredible. So go check out Camino Kid. It is on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere there is music distribution, and I will leave a link in the bio for you to go and check it out. I am so excited for everybody to listen to the next podcast coming out in 2 weeks, where I interview my friend Ernesto, who has his own podcast, I Am Not Podcast. It's a powerful episode, and I am so excited to share it with everybody. That episode will be out in 2 weeks, and it will be out next week for the Patreon subscribers only. I hope everybody has an amazing week, and thank you so much again for listening to The Road to Reconstruction.